Welcome to another episode of the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest with us Dr. Maurice Smith. And Dr. Maurice Smith works at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. But before we get into the conversation, I will share a little about Dr. Smith before he get a chance to share. Dr. Smith, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Cross. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you.
Okay, I appreciate you coming here. Dr. Smith is a multi-talented education professional with 25 years of global experience in leadership development, strategic and operational planning, systems design, school suspension, organizational development, performance management, higher education, administration, and policy articulation. Dr. Smith, welcome to the Black Male Impact. And please, if you could share your background or some experience about or things about yourself that to give the listeners an opportunity to know who you are before we get into the conversation.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to share. I appreciate it. So I'm Jamaican by birth. I do have two brothers, and I was grown by a single mother, single parent home, my mother and my maternal, my mother's mother. And so that influence still is with me. I've been in education all my life. It's not something that happened by chance. I actually feel that I was created to do this, and I've been following that particular purpose ever since. And so I think it's my role in education to articulate, as you would have said, policy and provisions that are designed to ensure that there's equity so that disadvantaged young people have an opportunity to grow and to become their best selves and to thereafter impact the world and the communities in which they live in a positive way. That's in a nutshell, is the person I am. I am a Sagittarian by birth, so my birthday is just but a few days away, and I am a man of faith. And those are the things that are responsible for the groundings that I have. And so that's me in a nutshell.
All right, man. Thanks for sharing. And thanks also for your dedication to education, because one of the things that we hear a lot, that we don't have a lot of men in education, which serve as inspiration, especially for our young males, so they can have people, young male figure that they can look up to as role models. And it's one of the same things that we have here as a challenge in the United States, where there have been a drive to get more men, Black men especially, in education. So, man, thanks for your dedication to serving, especially the next generation of leaders.
Yes.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to get straight into the questions. And my first question to you is, what is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
I think for one to have a positive impact, there must be clarity of purpose. I think there has to be that conviction within that you know who you are, you know the purpose for which you have been called, you know the mission for which you have been created. And it is to zoom in on that, it's to not necessarily admit into your consciousness all of the other noises, all the other voices, all the other variables. You are aware of them, but you don't allow them to determine your output. So I think it is, in order for one to have a positive impact, really one has to connect with yourself, your true self, and to understand what your potential really is, what your purpose really is, what you're called to do. And I think once you focus on that, then the doors open and you are pushed, you are channeled into the avenue and through the doors through which you must enter.
That's really profound, and especially getting a clarity of purpose, because if you're going to make an impact, you must know what impact you want to
You
make.
must know what impact, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Richard, I would have had, when I was going to school, I had, at that time, in that era, and perhaps to a lesser extent it still exists, but at that time, if you were of a particular gifting, you were almost crowned a medical lawyer or a medical doctor. that wasn't my calling. And I could have done either profession, but that wasn't what I was created to do. And so I obeyed, if you will, the call that was placed on my life. And so I think it's very important. It's actually critical for you to know what that purpose is. So when I talk about clarity, that one has to have a conversation with self early. Why am I here? Why was my mother with my father? What was the reason for which I was born? And once you can answer those questions and you position yourself to walk in that path, then I think you'll have the impact that you were designed to have.
That's really, again, I would say profound. And I don't think a lot of us ask that question. And I don't think we realize at times how important that is. Because even for myself, I didn't realize what I was about really until later in my life. I
Yes,
start asking myself those questions
yes,
in my 20s when I realized that I have potential. Because growing up for me, I didn't see myself as someone who was supposed to be successful really because I
right.
didn't do so well in high school from an academic
Yes,
standpoint.
yes.
So it was in my 20s when I started to realize that, maybe what, I have potential. So I started to ask myself those questions. But especially for the listeners and the younger generation that's listening, that's a really good question to ask
Right. To ask and
ourselves.
to answer. And look at you now, you are unstoppable.
Yes, sir, I appreciate that. Because it's important.
It's important. Once you connect your purpose, and I tell you, life is so funny because once you are able to ask that question, all the resources you need to enable you to do what you need to do will come your way.
That is so true. That is so true because you connect with people that you
Mhm.
need to connect with, and as you said, the resources. You just need to identify what you're about, and it makes
Absolutely.
it easier to see the things that will help you to get
Absolutely.
to where you want to be. So that is a really valid point in making a positive impact. Clarity of purpose.
Yes.
So yes, yes, sir. So I'm going to ask my next question, and it is, what advice do you have for the men listening on how they can play a role in creating positive change?
The advice that I would offer is, as much as is possible, try to locate yourself within the bigger picture. That for you to change the world, you have to change a community. And before you can change a community, you will have to change yourself. So it is challenging yourself to become your best self. It's challenging yourself to become better. It's taking yourself to another level because if you can't grow yourself, if you can't groom yourself, you can't grow or groom anybody else. And for us to change the world, we have to change the people in the world. But before we can change the people in the world, we have to change ourselves. Because I can't take someone to a place, a point to which I've never been. So my advice is spend quality meaningful time locating yourself within the bigger picture. Again, it goes back to clarity of purpose. Again, it goes back to discovering who you are. And once you connect your consciousness with your potential and you are able to challenge yourself, you're able to groom yourself, you're able to grow yourself, then you can help somebody else. And when one powerful man connects with another powerful man and one powerful family connects with another powerful family, we have powerful communities. And that's when we're able to realize change. But we can't effect change on the big scene, the big stage. We can't effect change at the macro level until we effect change at the micro level. And we can't effect change at the micro level until we can effect change within. So the advice that I would give is spend some time reasoning with yourself, spend some time introspecting, challenge yourself, change yourself. And once you do that, you're better able to connect, challenge, groom, grow other people. And together we can make the world of difference.
I really love that perspective. I really, really love that perspective because that is it in a nutshell, really. If we're going to see change especially in the world around us, it
Absolutely.
starts with us. We
Starts
have
with us.
to be dedicated to becoming our best self, as you shared. And once we do that, we can start changing the people around us. But a point that you made, which I believe is really critical, for us to take someone to another level, we need to get to that level.
Absolutely. It requires a paradigm shift. And
Yeah.
this paradigm shift is mental.
Yes.
You really have to have a vision. You have to see yourself in the future. You
Yes.
have to look at the end state and work from that point backwards to your current reality. It's the challenge is within the mind. And if you can overcome that, if you can create that new space, that new paradigm in your head, in your mind, I tell you, once there is vision, there's clarity, you're on your way.
Dr. Smith, and I can tell you that was what happened for me.
Yes,
That change in mindset. Because sometimes when you grow up in a poverty and you start to think according to your
your
environment,
environment, yes,
yeah, you limit yourself, not knowing
absolutely,
that you can think outside of your environment, because your environment should not limit your thinking. But
absolutely.
we grew up in an environment where we think our social status is who we are.
Defines who you are, and it's not. And Richard, you and I, and I'm sure countless other peoples are testament to that. But again, it starts if you can, if one can change the way he thinks, if one can elevate himself above his environment, if one can realize that he is the creator, the shaper of the destiny, and you're not a victim of, you're not prey to, you can actually challenge your circumstances. If you can unearth and not unleash that mental power, you're unstoppable.
I agree with you totally. Once that happens,
Yeah,
man, you are unstoppable for real, because challenges will not stop you. People who discourage you will not stop you. Setback will not stop you. None of those things
none of those
becomes
things.
a barrier, because now you realize that right here is what
Absolutely.
controls what you do
Absolutely.
and how you show up
Absolutely.
in life.
We are our greatest barriers. We are our greatest impediments. And once we get over ourselves, we can get over anything else.
And that is so true. And I can tell you, listeners, everything that we want to do and change begins with us and begins in our mind, just to have that paradigm shift. And once we have that paradigm shift, we can help others to become who they are capable of, because first, we must model the possibility. And so that's really a great point. So I'm going to go into the next question.
Okay.
How can we, as Black men, help to change the narrative today?
I, we change the narrative by changing the narrative.
Yes.
So the work begins on the inside, how we think, but then it continues by virtue of what we say. So we don't define ourselves, as you said so eloquently, we don't define ourselves, Richard, by our circumstances, but we speak newness into being. So once we have that vision, we need to articulate that vision. We need to express that vision. And my mind is replete with so many examples. And my sharing with you is not from a theoretical standpoint. It's not what's contained on the pages of a book. These are real life experiences for me. It's getting up each day and it's declaring, it's pronouncing, it's speaking into the atmosphere what you want. It's ensuring that there's word power. So you change the narrative by changing the narrative. I'm not who I am. I'm not who they say I am. I am who I'm destined to be. And by the power of the word that's in my mind, what I'm thinking, that word is translated into statements that leave my lips. And so each day I get up, I say to myself, I'm a powerful creature. I'm a purpose-driven man. I want this, I want that, I want that. I listen, as a little boy, as I said, I grew up with my mother and my grandmother and two older brothers. We didn't have disposable income. That wasn't something that was available to us. It wasn't it just was not the case. The first time I went in a bus for a 45-minute ride was when I was leaving primary school to go to high school. And I would declare that I was more than that. This wasn't the life for me. Now I'm sitting on airplanes for 25 hours. A little boy who the first time he went in a bus for 45 minutes from one place to the other was when he was 12 years old. Now I'm sitting on aircraft for 25 hours. I was thinking the other day, I've gone probably about 12 or 13 work trips over the last couple of months. And I'm saying you change the narrative by changing narratives. When you shall have settled on the vision and the destination in your head, then you start speaking it into the atmosphere. So you use your words to assist you in the creation of your vision, in the creation of your destiny, in the attainment of your vision. So you change the narrative by declaring into the atmosphere that which you want, that which you envisage, that which you desire for yourself, that which you desire for your family, that which you desire for your community, that which you desire for the world. You speak things into being and they shall be. That's
You
how you
know,
change the narrative.
I wish the young people can get this message early because, as you said, our words are powerful. And the
Words have
more we
power.
speak positively over ourselves and our destiny, the more we show up in the world with that
Absolutely.
perspective on life. And it is so profound to hear and just to be reminded, not just for myself, but even for others,
Yes.
the importance of the words we use each day. Because a lot of times what we do is talk negatively or say things, I don't think that can happen. I don't
I
think
can't
do
do
that.
this. Yeah, yeah. Can I just share a quick example, with you? You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
just earlier this year, I was delivering a session on visioning. And we were talking about doing the vision board and setting out your plan, et cetera, et cetera. And I tend to be very interactive and pragmatic in my sessions. And I made a confession to my group. I said to them, you know, I've never been to the continent of Africa. And I'm not going to be paying for it. I must go to Africa and I'm not going to pay for it. And it has to happen this year. And I spoke it into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Can I tell you, just miraculously, I had even forgotten about it. Can I tell you, about 2 months ago, I said to somebody, I had said this year I'm going to go to Africa and I haven't been. And you know, the next day I got an invitation and I'm actually heading to Africa in 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Your words have power. So I endorse what you're saying. Watch what you say about yourself. Watch
Yes.
what you say about your future. Speak positive things. Your words create your reality. That's how you change the narrative.
And again, it goes back to what you said earlier. The change outside of ourselves begin with ourselves.
Absolutely.
So we must internalize the things that we want to see in our environment. As they said, the change you want to see begins with you.
Begins with you.
And so that's a great reminder, again, to us all, to everyone that's listening, because life happens. And we must not forget that despite what's going on around us, we have control of what we say about ourselves and
Absolutely.
our future.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's really a great reminder, especially when we're talking about changing the narrative.
Mhm.
My next question is, what or who has influenced or inspired you to pursue the path that you're on? I know you mentioned that was your calling, but to be in education. But was there anyone who make a lasting impact on you?
Wow. Yes, I've had my mother is a great place to start. Not my mother is a very modest, but resolute individual, very resilient individual, quiet disposition, but strong in terms of resilience and strong in terms of character. And so she taught me from an early age that one doesn't necessarily need to go about, making a lot of noise. You let your work and your worth speak for you. And when you are a person of excellence, opportunities come to you. You don't really have to go in search of opportunities come to you. Your gifts, your giftings, your gifts make room for you. So I would say the first person was my mother and still is. And to a large extent, I've had powerful teachers, unsung men and women who were the depth of character and the competence and the charisma were such that you couldn't help but be infected by who they were in terms of their outlook and their philosophy and their drive and their faith. So I've had powerful teachers at the primary school, and I must tell you this. So I did much of my up to college. I did that in Jamaica, but I did my master's in and my PhD in the US, and I've had remarkable instructors at every single level. I'm saying that to say that once you start this journey, you're walking on this path to discover your purpose and to pursue it with passion. The provision in terms of people, in terms of opportunities, in terms of money, whatever resources you need come to you. So I've had the brilliance of interacting with dynamic individuals on a personal and professional level. I've had some spiritual fathers who have guarded me, who have guided me, who have corrected me, and I have many who they weren't impressed by your credentials. They're simply interested in you becoming your best self. And you need someone in your life, Richard, who will tell you as it is. They're not intimidated by you, they're not impressed by accomplishments. They have a clear vision of who you are to become, and they will coach you and they will guide you along the way. And so your accomplishments and your credentials mean nothing to them. So you want somebody who will tell you the truth to your face, say, man, you're doing the right thing, or say, listen, bro, you're off track. Get back on track. And so you need someone who will watch over you. You need someone who won't compromise the truth, who will tell you as it is and will love you nonetheless. So I've had the blessing of having had those people guiding me along the way.
And you know what? Uh, there's nothing really to add to that, because how you show up in life and the work that you're doing, it's testament to those individuals that you have encountered on your
Yeah,
journey. Because as you said, your work and your worth speak for itself,
yeah,
and that shows not only your commitment, but those people who have played a role in your development in pursuing your passion and your purpose. So that in itself, as we go on this journey, we need to start paying attention, especially when we know what we want. Those individuals who are ahead of us and may have more experience and
yes,
knowledge, to really pay attention so we can learn as much as possible from those individuals. So I really appreciate that. And what I also realized that a lot of us as men, our mothers really played a great role in, even if it's not what we pursue, but in our character and
yes,
how we
yes.
go about
That's
living our lives. So that also shows how the environment plays a role in how we show up in life. So I'm going to go into my next question, and some of these questions they are related to, you may have answered part of the question already, but what
okay.
so what is your perspective on the current climate of Black men in society today?
Wow. I think there are some structural and some systemic issues that we have to address if we're going to change the perception and the image and the reality of Black men in our society. It's unfortunate that, and we could look at this from a racial standpoint, as is the reality in North America and elsewhere. But we could also look at it from a classist standpoint, as is the reality in the Caribbean and elsewhere. So there are a number of lenses through which we could look at that. And at the risk of not becoming too verbose on this particular matter, I think we need to take a stock. We need to take stock of the current socioeconomic and cultural variables at play that are largely institutionalized to perpetuate this notion that Black men are perpetrators of injustice and criminal activity. And where in societies such as ours, where to a large extent that's true, it serves us best to stop and to ask ourselves why. Why are we producing men who are not, more men who are not pillars of society? Why are we not producing more men who are positive contributors to society? Why are we not producing more men who have families and who are healthy models, role models, and contributors and participants to family life? We need to look at this. And from an educational standpoint, when we look at high needs schools or urban schools, or we look at some of the structures and the policies that are in place, it is no wonder things are the way they are. We are not tapping into the psychology. We're not tapping into the potential of men. We're not helping them to themselves internalize the greatness that is within them. We are not deconstructing those models that cause men to not be a part of the formal system. We're not realizing that men aren't aren't, it's difficult for us to sit in a classroom, and the fact that we're not sitting in a classroom, even at the tertiary level, the fact that we're not sitting in a classroom and pursuing programs does not mean that we don't have potential, but it is how we modify to fit. Instead of having one approach for everybody, how do we create opportunities to help men, irrespective of age, irrespective of class, irrespective of location? How do we help them to create a better future for themselves and for their families? So I think we do have some unfortunate instances of men who are not living up to their potential. But I think in order for us to intervene, we have to rehabilitate not just the persons, but we have to rehabilitate the structures and the systems that produce men who are functioning out of character. So I think when politics and housing and education, I think all of these sectors, all of these industries need to do some deep diving, some introspection to change the policy provisions, to change infrastructure, to change how institutions function so that we are better able to prevent in some instances and better able in other instances to intervene in the narrative that causes men to function out of character.
That's a lot to take in, but what you said, we know that there are some injustices and systemic
Yes,
issues that we're dealing with, and as you said, some of those things need to be rehabilitated. Need to change for us to start seeing changes, because we can focus on the men that they need to do this, but what are the things that are in place to help them to
absolutely.
see themselves in a different light? Because innately we have the ability, but sometimes before we get to that point to realize what's in us, what's around us needs to change, because the system itself has been in place, and we sometimes live out what has been socially constructed.
That's true. That's
you know
true.
yes, so sometimes once we can change that part, we'll start to have changes within our community by providing the resources, providing the opportunities and the development for us to break those barriers or those generational strongholds that has been in place for a long time. Because once, if you start to look at yourself through the lens of what's been in place over the years, then you may just live out that as a
Yeah,
self-fulfilling
self-fulfilling
prophecy.
prophecy. I agree with you. I wish it, as you said, and forgive my jumping in, but I get passionate about these
Yes,
issues.
yes, yes.
It as you raise expectations of people, they raise their own expectations and they often meet or exceed the expectations you have of them. So when the narrative is negative, then what's the point? Because you've already cast my future. But if we start speaking differently, if we start providing for men, you talked earlier, Richard, about men not going into teaching. It is difficult for a man to take care of his family and to be that breadwinner and that provider. And those are the things that excite us as men. We want to provide, we want you to know that we have it. But it's difficult for us to do that in a meaningful way on salaries that are paid to men. So maybe one of the things that we should do, and this it's somewhat controversial. I've said this before, and I've earned the wrath of saying it, but I'm accustomed to that. Maybe one of the things that we could do, is to consider, if we want to attract more men, more Black men into education to be good role models, could we pay them a salary that's a little bit higher so that they are better able to stay in education and take care of their families? All of do we necessarily need a man to sit on the campus of our universities for 4 years, doing 70, 80 credits? To what extent could we mix that or integrate that or blend that into economic prospects, community engagement, leadership development? How do we cater to the physical and psychological needs of male learners so that they can get a college education, they can be certified, they can enter the formal education system so that there is some continuity. There are so many structural things that we need to consider. But again, if we keep doing things the way we've always been doing, we're going to keep getting the same results we've always been getting. So I think there needs to be some really deep-seated introspective conversations at the institutional level, at the structural level, to look at how is society ordered and to what extent is the order maintaining the challenges that we're having.
And There's not much that I can add to what you just said, but once things just need to be in place, and we can't do things as we always do it. We have to create some changes
Yes,
to get different results. But I like the idea of providing different incentives to attract more males in the education arena to see it as an option, a more viable option for them, so they can later provide for their family, of
yes,
course, but also the experience whilst they're going through the process to develop the love and passion to serve in that area. So I really appreciate that perspective on and getting more men in the classroom or in education itself. So my next question is, what was a pivotal moment in your life?
this is and this is not a thought through response. What have been pivotal moments in my life? One, at age 13, admitting, I recall making a decision that I would allow faith to guide my every move. And so I'm someone who is deeply, I'm going to say spiritual. I pray a lot. I reflect a lot. I read a lot and I connect with, I try my best to connect with that high power. So for me, I believe that God is a real part of my journey. And so it may not be, I'm not expecting everyone to share my belief, but since you asked me, I'm giving my my view. So I think connecting faith to everything else in terms of my realities, my existential circumstances, faith plays a hugely critical role. I think it's important for one to connect with someone that's bigger than himself. I think it's important to tap in. So I remember at age 13, I made a conscious decision so to do. I also remember at when I was just starting my master's, when I was being removed from the classroom after 4 months of doing courses, getting all A's, not having the resources, not having paid any money. And someone saw I was invited by the lecturer to go outside of the classroom, at which point he indicated to me that he had gotten strict instructions to exclude me from the class because I had not had the resources to pay any tuition, which is true. And when I got back in the classroom to collect my things, someone saw me and saw how despondent I was looking and struck up a conversation with me and said to me, asked me, why are you looking the way you're looking? And I said to her, this was a Friday afternoon in October. I said to her, I'm going to be discontinuing because I don't have the fees to pay. And she had a good laugh. And she said, you're silly. I've had 3 loans at the bank and all of them are in arrears. And Monday morning, I'm going to go to the bank to get a fourth loan. And I don't know what happened. I don't know, but that conversation had an indelible mark on me because it made me realize that as unfortunate as I am, or as I was, someone was in a less fortunate position than me. And it may sound simple, but that was an epiphany to me. Because again, I was so focusing on my circumstance that I had missed all the opportunities that were around me. And so because she shared what she shared her experience with me, I don't know what happened. I just had a turnaround and I said no. And I dug deep and started speaking to the atmosphere. And the following week, resources just started coming in. And it sounds, this is just the truth, Richard. This is just the hard reality. So I've had those. So those are two pivotal points. I mean, I'm saying all that to say, when we share our experiences with others, iron sharpens iron. And you never know how your experience, how your sharing, how your word will positively impact and serve as a pivot for somebody else. So that happened to me, changed my life. And every time I get an opportunity, I share my story, my experiences with other people because deep calls unto deep, iron sharpens iron. Those pivotal moments made me realize that, again, look within, the answers are there.
Yeah.
Those pivotal moments made me realize that things are not as bad as they seem. Those pivotal moments made me realize that someone is in a far worse off situation than you. And so when you put words out into the atmosphere, I tell you that doing that opens doors. So those are two pivotal moments that readily came to mind as you asked that question.
And again, just to what you have said, and just a reminder to us, sharing our story can impact others, but also be mindful of don't think because of the situation now, the situation cannot change.
Can change.
Because
Can.
it can change.
It can.
With one conversation, it can change. So that's a great reminder to all of us that's listening. And I'm going to go into the next question. What life lesson have you learned late in life that you believe is important for this current generation?
Know who you are.
Know who you are.
Know who you are. And I didn't know who I was at an early age. I searched for that, and I knew what I was called to do, but I didn't know who I was. And there's a distinct difference, Richard, between what we do and who we are. The fact that I am a university administrator, I have 50,000 students here at the University of West Indies, almost 8,000 staff members spread across 17 countries, 5 campuses. I have a great team. I have 7 units in my division. I have a great team. But I am not a what I do is higher education administration, but that's not who I am. Who I am, who is different from what I do. And so I am an administrator, but I'm a human being. I'm a man. I'm a Black man. I'm a person. I have thoughts. I have ideas. I have strengths. I have weaknesses. I proclivities. Who I am is not what I do. And so at an early age, I knew what I was called to do, but I didn't know at the time who I was. So it was later in life that as I discovered who I am, what makes me tick, what I like, what I don't like. Had I known that from the very beginning, then I probably think my life would have been even better than it is, because I'm good. I'm good now. So my encouragement to younger men is not only know what you're called to do in terms of your purpose, but know who you are in terms of your purpose. Know what you like, know what you don't like, know what makes you tick, know what your dreams are, know what your fears are, understand what your strengths are, know you. If you don't know who you are, nobody else can know you. If you can't conquer yourself, you can't help anybody to conquer themselves either. So in giving of ourselves, it's not just giving of ourselves professionally, but it's also giving of ourselves to our loved ones, to our families, to our spouses, our partners, our kids, our neighbors, our community. But it's you have to know who you are.
That's really important and also a great reminder. It's not just what we do, but who we are. And we need to know who we are. In regards, as you said, I'll just take one part from it, our strengths and weaknesses. We need to know what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are in regards to what we are doing, because that can also make us more effective and know where we need to ask for help and maybe where we can extend
Absolutely.
ourselves
Absolutely.
more. So before I ask the final question, where can the listeners, get in contact with you and learn more about what you're doing?
Well, there are so many levels to that. At the University of the West Indies, here in Jamaica. The headquarters is headquartered here in Kingston, Jamaica, but as I said, we serve the entire Caribbean. That's one. I'm also affiliated with I Am USA. This is an organization that is creating opportunities for disadvantaged kids in urban communities within the USA. I'm also a Justice of the Peace here in Kingston. So again, that's another sphere. So LinkedIn, or social media pages. Once you Google me, my name will come up. There's so many things that we do. Faith Cathedral Deliverance Center in Kingston, Jamaica. So there's so many opportunities, so many angles. So any one of those windows will provide an opportunity to get in contact with me so that persons can see the work that we're doing here.
Okay. All right. And I will also put ways to connect with you in
Sure.
the description,
Thank you.
so other individuals can, reach out and learn more about what you're doing. So my final question is, what impact do you want to have on the world?
The impact that I am committed to having and continuing so to do is helping individuals become their best selves. When you shall have interacted with me in any sphere, at the end of that interaction, there should be an epiphany, there should be a lesson, there should be something that's said or done that will cause you to connect with your greater purpose. So that at the end of that interaction, you are further along your journey. You are on one wrong, you are a wrong higher in your mission to becoming your best self. So the impact that I want to continue to have is to help individuals around me become their best selves, to walk in the fullness of potential so they know who they are and they're able to better serve, position, and change the world.
And listening to you from we started the conversation and you exemplify that in your answers. And just listening, what comes from you most of the time, it's what's in you. And for you to share, and you've shared a lot of insight and perspective. So even in this one conversation, those who listen and hear what you shared will be impacted, gain insight on how they can become better or how they can transform their lives from renewing their mind despite their environment. So I also that's a great reminder to those who are listening. But you said it over and over in your response, the impact that you want to have on others. So that's great way to live because our time here should help others
Absolutely.
to be their best self.
Yes,
So yes,
absolutely.
sir. Yes, so Dr. Smith, man, it was a pleasure having you here on the Black Male Impact. Your words, I really appreciate what you shared with us. And again, I want to say thanks for being here on the Black Male Impact.
Well, Dr. Cross, thank you so very much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. I never take these things lightly, never take them for granted. We never know how these engagements, how these conversations change and challenge other persons. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm indebted.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks. And it's great to have you. Listeners, stay tuned and just keep listening as we continue to share ways on how to make a difference in the world.